I'm John Parker, so I'm Vice President of Data Science for Innive, and we're actually a company that's focused on data analytics, mostly for K-12. A little bit of EDU, higher ed, but mostly all of K-12. So,
Great. What would you say is the biggest challenge to leveraging data analytics in K-12 education?
great question. Okay, well, first of all, it's really data in K-12, they have tons of it, right? Okay, but it's all like in little silos. And most of it's just not connected in really a way to kind of really be able to support decision making. So number one really is just the challenge of integrating data to really make it useful. Okay. Number two would really be probably data literacy. Once you make it useful, then you still have to have people that really know how to use it, right?
Yeah.
And so really data literacy, I don't think is really where it needs to be, either among, say educators, administrators or whatever, because there's a lot more that could really be done with it. Really, number three is, and kind of working across other industries is that our data governance in K-12 is really rather limited. Just kind of immature. Most people, even large districts, like, I've worked with some of the largest in the country, they're just now getting started really on a data governance program. And that's so key because of, if you're really going to have good data, then it has to kind of be governed and to really secure it, protect it, make it useful, et cetera. So I'd say that's probably, kind of the top three challenges.
How do vendors benefit from working with a data standard like EdFi?
Well, actually, they get a lot of benefits out of it, okay? And let's just kind of dig into this a little bit deeper, okay? Because I've been working with EdFi probably for, over 5 years. In fact, in 2020, I think we were the partner of the year, for EdFi, and I've been heavily involved in the community. So really, one of the top benefits you really get is that you become part of a really tightly knit community. And if you ever go to say an EdFi Alliance meeting, it's probably one of the best conferences I've ever attended really on K-12 education. Simply, it's not too big. Everybody knows one another, and it really kind of gives you connections, okay? If you look at it really more from a business perspective, in the future, it's highly likely if you're going to be able to sell your product, it may have to be really connected to EdFi to even be able to sell. There's some districts that are requiring that in terms of their RFPs, and more are really encouraging doing that, okay? It also really presents new opportunities that you didn't have. A lot of states now are adopting EdFi. Let's just say Texas, Wisconsin. Well, there's many of them, okay? Well, let's just look at Texas, okay? So that's where we're at today. Texas basically is actually trying to create like a application marketplace for EdFi apps that would actually be able to tie into kind of the state's EdFi. So really, that's going to create opportunities really that vendors didn't really have before, okay? Other things would really just be that, one of the key things if you're an ed tech product is just the ability to kind of be able to get rostering data. There are a couple ways to do that. I mean, you can use like Clever or ClassLink, which are really good, but you got to pay really to participate, right? Okay, if you use EdFi or the district's adopted that, you could use one roster standards, accessing standard EdFi information and really kind of avoid a lot of fees. So that's kind of significant cost savings.
Yeah.
I think, first and foremost is that EdFi, it is an integrated student data model. And yes, it's probably missing some domains. It's definitely not perfect or whatever. I think, some of the domains they have are very rich. But think about it. What you really have is you're actually able to take your data and you're basically able to integrate it into the district's data model, okay? So instead of just being like this disconnected silo, you're actually, part of the student's data model, which is very key. I would say that's kind of the key benefits. Probably another big benefit too is that it's really just the time and complexity of being able to implement your software. One of the things we always have to wait for is data, really for rostering data, and even additional data that we may really need to kind of run our ed tech product, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, with EdFi, it's all there. So guess what? If you're using EdFi APIs, okay, you can actually implement that almost immediately because you just access the EdFi, the EdFi APIs really once you have your proper, security authorizations and your product's up and going. Okay, so instead of having to, work with every single district and all the time it takes to try to get data needed to really feed your product, you're up and going. And not only that, you can actually send the data back. So you really save time just in all these integrations. And so those are like, huge benefits.
Yeah, that's great. How do you think K-12 data analytics will evolve over the next 5 years?
Ooh, okay, I think we're really looking at some big changes. So let's just kind of look at, analytics in general, okay? First of all, we're seeing, artificial intelligence kind of integrated in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing AI in a lot of ways. We're seeing it really for machine learning and predictive analytics. And we're also seeing it a lot just in terms of natural language interfaces. So I can tell you a lot. I've actually worked a lot with teachers in terms of developing dashboards, okay? And, it's really funny because you pretty much have the ELA teachers and you have the math teachers, right? Okay, and the ELA teachers generally are pretty afraid of visualizations and math, okay? So they don't really use the dashboards maybe the way they should, okay?
Yeah.
So they really prefer to get information back in terms of narratives. So what we're seeing is a lot of advanced functionality just in terms of analytics products being able to produce narratives. A good example would be something like, Chat GPT, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you can imagine if you got back analytics information, okay? So also then imagine in terms of natural languages that if you could just type in a phrase or even talk to your computer, basically, if you were like an administrator, you might want to say, okay, how many more students, have we reclassified? How many English learners have we reclassified this year versus how many we have this last year at the same time? Okay, and imagine just being able to get an answer back immediately on that, or any other type of question that you wanted to. That's a big, big thing, and that's really I think where we're headed. We're actually talking about a lot of natural language interfaces, just kind of being built in. I think another thing is that we're also seeing really kind of analytics really kind of move towards mobile platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you always have information with you all the time. So if you're out on the playground and something happens, okay, guess what? You have analytics information about that particular child or whatever that you can actually respond to or whatever. I think even in terms, I think we're going to see analytics really spread in terms of students having access to their own analytics. I think that's kind of a key trend that I'm starting to see. So it's not just teachers and staff and administrators and educators, whatever. We're talking about students, and we're also talking about parents too, because what we really want to see is kind of this positive trend line of really kind of a student moving up and kind of it's kind of constant growth each year. And the data is really there to do that. But guess what? Let them share, let them let them see their progress, okay, and kind of use it as a motivation tool. And most of the products now are really starting to support that. So I think just our users will be a lot broader. I think we will also see probably vast increases in data literacy over the next 5 years. I know I talked about that earlier, but I do think that that'll also be very key because I think people will really learn. And I mean educators, parents, administrators, and students will actually learn how to use data to kind of really improve their education. And they'll have a much better perspective in terms of what they did. I think we'll also see new types of data really being integrated. So a good example is we really don't have a lot of, let's just say, curriculum data that's really integrated in with anything else. It just kind of stands as its own island, even though it's a very, very key part of education. Take instructional materials and curriculum. Okay, you just don't see analytics on that. You might see it in terms of like tied into an assignment on a learning management system. But we really don't know if the curriculum is really being used the way that it's supposed to. We don't even know how effective it is. Mm. We don't even know, is it effective for one teacher and not another? So a lot of the stuff that you really need just to really be able to evaluate your curriculum, it's really hard to get the information because we're just relying on subjective information versus objective.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these new data sources will be very important.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else about Innive or your work that would be important for you to share with us today?
Yeah, I would like to share. Okay, I'm actually, I'm in Austin for a couple of reasons. We're actually heavily involved with Austin ISD. Okay, and actually, what we're working on with them is I'll just call it a self-service analytics program. So what we're trying to do is we're really trying to work with kind of data analysts and even ultimately kind of end users in terms of curating data so they can kind of create their own data sets and really create their own visualizations. And I really see that as really key for a lot of districts. Even though we're an analytics company and we produce dashboards, I think dashboards are going to become less and less valuable because I think users will actually be able to answer their own analytics.
Mm.
Okay, so a good example, even going back to the examples I gave in terms of like natural language interfaces and being able to answer questions. Okay, if you can interact with your data that way, you can actually end up with a lot better information. So what we want to do is we actually want to see teachers actually be able to kind of produce their own analytics for their classroom, because maybe they have different things and different techniques that they did, and they actually want to be able to kind of test that out, and they really want to be able to see the information to do that. That's pretty much impossible now, because they'd have to go to a whole bunch of different places. They really couldn't do a very good job of doing that, but in the future, I think they will be able to. And even like looking at students and identifying, high-risk students, okay, or maybe high-risk students in the way that they actually, teach or really with this particular curriculum, they can really, dig in a lot deeper and things like that. So it gives them insights that they need really to be much more effective educators. Well, first of all, I really have enjoyed working with Project Unicorn. I actually, serve on a task force, which I really enjoy, because I really believe, that interoperability and data is just really key. Okay, so I think Project Unicorn's work really in that is absolutely critical, really, to the future of education, because we're really not going to get there without like an organization like Project Unicorn really kind of doing this. Really making sure that we use best practices for protecting the data. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and how to make it interoperable. And I like Project Unicorn because it's kind of approaching interoperability from several different perspectives that you don't see. I mean, obviously, it's kind of approaching it from one roster and SSO and rostering. It's really kind of it's also kind of approaching it really just in terms of interoperability or exchange of data between products, kind of like what EdFi does. Using like an operational data store. And then, of course, my big interest is really the analytics, and really trying to basically be able to extract data from an operational data store and convert that into metrics, like really kind of the analytics perspective or kind of a more longitudinal perspective. And I've seen Project Unicorn kind of involved in all of those. So I think it's very, very key for our K-12 industry. We really have all this data siloed, right? And even like working with gigantic districts. I mean, for instance, I basically served as kind of the chief data architect for LA Unified for 6 years. I would get on an airplane from San Antonio every week, fly to LA, and I was there every single week, and that's what I did. So we integrated 127 data sources, right? And it was painful.
Wow.
A lot of money too. But
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine really being able to do that. And see, the problem is like you have all this siloed information, right?
Mm-hmm.
A typical district uses between 60 to 80 products, and that's really on the low end. You can look at a lot higher than that if you look at some of the other companies. But see, all that stuff has to kind of be integrated if you're really going to get a whole child view, right? And let's face it, I mean, there's over 9,000 ed tech vendors, right?
Mm-hmm.
9,000. Okay, so and all of them are kind of associated with schools, but yet we're just not capturing that information. So if we're really going to have interoperability, we got to have it at that level of integrating in ed tech products. And so the real power is basically be able to integrate in these other data sources.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
I hope that helped, but I really believe it.